Said it's become the battle royale, as they say, between two brothers literally warring over one particular property. It's all over the headlines, and a lot of people are speculating exactly what is the true meaning behind, of course, His Majesty the King's sudden demand for the return of Royal Lodge, the home, of course, of the Duke and Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson and Prince Andrew. Oh yes, let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you today in this beautiful setting as ever. Nice to have your company. You're all right. Thank you so much as ever for taking the time out to see me. And thank you also for your lovely comments about has your cold got better, Neil. Still a little bit rattly. Good to share with you though. And I'm taking on board everything you say about, is it the Hanukkah honey? Stuff like that, you know. But have you noticed you end up buying loads of things that are suddenly going to become a cure, and then you've got a cabinet full of stuff that you've only taken once or twice. I like the good old-fashioned sticking your head over a bowl, once you've taken the pots out, of course, and sticking a towel over it and a bit of steam. Have you noticed that? To me, it's the simplistic things that are the best. Some might suggest the same thing, of course, over here, particularly with the battling royal brothers. But let me tell you the true inside story to this particular, well, it is a royal feud, there's no two ways about it, but it could escalate simply because of this. As we now know, well, Prince Andrew has dug his heels in about Royal Lodge. This is, of course, on the Windsor estate, and it's not part of the Crown property, so this is where it gets confusing. Now, this was bestowed on him by, of course, our late and wonderful monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. And it gets more complicated than that, you see, because he has the lease that's in his name. He's paid apparently, you know, thousands over the years for renovations because it was quite run down. And of course, it's of historical value. Now, if you recall way back the previous January, His Majesty the King decided that he wanted Harry and Meghan to remove themselves from Frogmore Cottage. And the reason being that apparently this was going to be offered to Prince Andrew as a new place to stay, a much smaller space. The reason being, apparently, is that His Majesty the King is actually funding funding his brother on, of course, the commercial viability of money. And, you know, a lot of that money then has to go on renovating Royal Lodge. So why does His Majesty the King, in fact, want his younger brother out of Royal Lodge, along with Sarah Ferguson? See, people are very confused because recently Fergie was allowed back into the British monarchy. We saw her at Christmas, we've seen her at events. She's very, very sort of forthcoming about how much she admires the fact about His Majesty the King, King Charles. But there is sort of consternation between quite a few people within that particular family. Princess Beatrice and Eugenie are less than thrilled with King Charles, as one can imagine. Obviously, as we all know, Prince Andrew doesn't have any royal role anymore. So the bottom line is he's literally living on the estate, going out horse riding, reading and doing charitable funds off grid, that is not in the public domain. So he's not doing, you know, nothing at all. He's doing his fair share for charity but not getting the publicity. Now, the story goes that apparently Royal Lodge could now be offered to the Prince and Princess of Wales, Catherine and William, and apparently they were quite keen on this. To get it even more confusing, apparently Prince William is not too fond of Uncle Andrew. This is, of course, because of the alleged disgrace regarding the Epstein case and things like that. So where does it stand right now? Well, where it stands right now is simply this. His Majesty the King could cut off Prince Andrew's finance, which means he wouldn't be able to keep up, you know, the payments. Now, why would he want to do that? Well, simply because there is a good viable property, as I said, in Frogmore. And if Andrew doesn't wish to do that, then it could get legal. Will it? I doubt it. And I think at the 11th hour, in order to save face and not have any more bad publicity and perhaps take his collection of teddy bears, he will go down, of course, to Frogmore Cottage. But he will see this as an even more of a demotion, something that would never have happened under the tenure of our late monarch. So for now, it looks like a waiting game. Whatever you read in the media, this is truly what's happening. It's a waiting game between His Majesty the King and, of course, his younger brother, Prince Andrew. And it tells us basically who will crack first. But according to a very well-placed source, there are two people that wouldn't mind this as their own returning home, should and when that become available. I kid you not. Guess who? Yes, Harry and Meghan. Now the story gets complicated, and as ever, when I know more, you'll know more. Neil Sean in the very heart of a beautiful Yorkshire.